We good?
Yes.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Non-Strategic Planning Committee on the 4th of June. I'll start with item 1, apologies for absence and notification of substitute members.
Thank you, Chair. We have apologies from Councillor Tarbin and Councillor Ware. No substitutes. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, item 2, declarations of interest. Do any members of the committee have any declarations of interest in any of the items under consideration at this meeting? Councillor Smith.
Thank you. I have a declaration of interest in item 10 as the councillor who called the application in, so I will withdraw to speak against it and will not vote on that item.
Thank you. Item 3, minutes. Do we confirm the minutes of the meeting of the committee held on the 19th of May 2026 as a correct record? Yep. Okay, thank you. Item 4, Chair's announcements. Members of the public are permitted to film, broadcast and report on the meeting, subject to the efficient running of the meeting not being affected. Only those who have registered in line with the committee's speaking procedure may address the committee. Members of the public are requested not to call out during the committee's discussions on any item. Anybody who repeatedly disrupts the meeting may be asked to leave. All speakers will have 5 minutes in which to make their statement, except where Chair's discretion has been applied, and are asked to remain seated after they have addressed the committee to answer any questions the committee may have. This meeting is being webcast on the Council's corporate YouTube channel. Therefore, when speaking, please speak clearly and concisely into your microphone. There are no planned fire drills, so if the alarm does sound, evacuation instructions will be given by Democratic Services. Please ensure that any devices are switched off or on silent mode. For the benefit of the public watching remotely, I will now introduce the top table, starting at my furthest right.
Good afternoon, sir. My name's Sian Webb, Principal Lawyer of Planning and Highways. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Richard Woods, Democratic Services Officer.
I'm Councillor John East, I'm the committee chair.
And I'm Emma McDowell, Development Management Team Leader for the North area.
Item 5, proposed pre-committee site visits. The committee will undertake a site visit at 21 Whitegates, Northampton at 10 a.m. on Tuesday the 16th of June, ahead of our next meeting on Thursday the 18th of June. We now move on to item 6, which is Station Farm, Denton Road, Horton. I'll now hand over to the case officer, Rebecca Wilkinson Foster, to begin the presentation.
Thank you, Chair. This application is the creation of stables, menage and the change of use of agricultural land for the keeping of horses at Station Farm, Denton Road in Horton for private use. Photo 1 shows the site location of the proposal site behind Station Cottages. The application site is located within Station Farm, which lies to the north east of the village of Horton, as shown on photo 2. The land was previously arable land, but will be resown with grass for the proposed use of keeping horses. A disused railway line is located along the northern boundary of the site. The overall farm unit at Station Farm is 142 hectares and is used primarily for arable production. Development is for the creation of an outdoor menage and construction of stables for 4 horses on a total area of 1.8 hectares for personal use. The proposed stable block will be a single U-shaped building constructed in blockwork with facing brick and weatherboarding, which is typical of equestrian buildings in rural settings, as shown in this photo here. An all-weather menage of 40 by 20 metres will also be constructed for excising of the horses using post and rail fencing to allow excising in all weathers. The change from farmed arable land to grassland will result in enhancement of biodiversity value, and the site is compliant with the 10% biodiversity net gain as required for the site of this size. These photos show the site entrance alongside the existing cottages. And the first photo on the left shows the farm buildings across the road. And the very green photos show the area that will be changed for the stabling. More views of the field. The proposed stable building to the rear of the residential cottages with a relatively flat landscape will mean that proposed stable would not be highly visible from the public highway, and the proposed materials will be in keeping with the rural landscape of the area. No objections have been received to this application, and the application is recommended for approval subject to the conditions detailed in the report.
Thank you. Are there any questions from the committee at this point? No. Okay. There are no public speakers on this item, so we'll just move straight to the discussion on this. So, Councillor McMurtry.
Yeah, I mean, personally, I'm a bit confused. Yeah. Okay, all right. Yeah, I think it's fine. It looks good. There's no objections, anything like that. So, yeah, unless anyone else has any objections, I'd be happy to take officer's advice.
Does anyone else wish to add anything? Okay. Do we have a second in them for the proposal? Councillor Rainbird.
Okay, thank you, Chair. It's proposed by Councillor McMurtry and seconded by Councillor Rainbird that the application be approved in accordance with the officer's recommendations, subject to the conditions and details set out in the report. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Right, can I see a show of hands in favour of the proposal? That's unanimous. That's approved. We now move on to item 7, which is the land at Grange Farm, Foxhill Grange, Brixworth. I'll now hand over to the case officer, Jonathan Moore, to begin the presentation.
Thank you, Chair. This is a planning application for land at Grange Farm, Foxhill Grange, Brixworth, for construction of a detached dwelling with garage and outbuilding together, formation of access drive, hard and soft landscaping and associated works. The plan before you shows the site location plan. The site is located in open countryside, just outside the village of Brixworth, to the north of Pittsford Reservoir, the largest water body in the county. The application is to be assessed against paragraph 84E of the National Planning Policy Framework, which basically states that plan decisions should avoid the development of isolated homes in the countryside unless one or more of the following circumstances apply. Design is of exceptional quality in that it's truly outstanding, reflecting the highest standards in architecture, and would help to raise the standards of design more general in rural areas, and would significantly enhance its immediate setting, be sensitive to defining characteristics of the local area. The next slide shows the context of the site taken from Google Images. Pittsford Reservoir located to the south. The land is farmland just to the north of the reservoir. The next plan shows the context again, Foxhill Grange, just to the northeast of the site. This shows the landscape master plan. There's various planting proposed as part of the proposal, including woodland planting, ornamental shrubbery, and various vegetation. This elevation shows the south-facing elevation, which is basically the elevation which faces Pittsford Water. Pittsford Water is part of a site of special scientific interest, which is a national designation for nature conservation. The proposal shows a variety of architectural styles. The materials are shown use innovative sustainable practices such as living green walls, solar panels, EV charging, geothermal energy, uses a variety of materials including rusty ironstone walling, Asher stones, balconies, etc. But this elevation shows the north, which is obviously facing towards Holcott Road. This shows the east elevation as per the drawing in front of you. And this shows the west elevation. The floor plan in front of you shows the proposed ground floor plan. The ground floor plan includes 4 bedrooms, a study, games room, cinema room, gym, entertainment suite, lounge and kitchen. And the first floor plan includes master bedroom, kitchen, dining room, lounge and terrace. All the bedrooms will be en suite. This shows a sectional drawing through the site again, and this shows the roof plan. This is quite a useful image. It shows the photomontages of the south elevation facing towards the reservoir. Quite a useful image that shows how the proposed dwelling will look. Again, another image looking down towards the reservoir will show the views over the Pittsburgh Reservoir. Again, another photo image. And this is basically taken from across opposite side of the reservoir looking towards the site. The site's depicted by the red arrow in the diagram. Again, taken from the other side of the reservoir, showing the site. You can pick up Grange Farm on the right-hand side of the diagram. Again, this is taken looking down towards the reservoir. This is taken looking towards the reservoir again, showing the outlook from the dwelling from the south elevation. And again, this shows the hedge line where the access road would be proposed. The access road would be proposed coming off Holkett Road and running in the north-south direction, leading to the house. The recommendation before you tonight is for a refusal, as we consider that it doesn't meet the high bar that's set down in the National Plan Policy Framework. I would point out it's an exceptionally high bar to meet, to be truly outstanding and exceptional quality. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions from the committee at this point? No. Oh, Councillor Furman.
Thank you, Chair. I'm trying to understand the distinction being drawn here by the officers. Given the application has gone through multiple revisions and has received support from the independent, design review panel, could you explain specifically the qualities you consider are missing for it to reach truly outstanding threshold, please?
You are correct that it has been through an independent design review panel. However, obviously the design is subjective, and the view reached by our own internal specialist services team and design officers was that it didn't reach the high bar to be exceptional design. Now, we do acknowledge that parts of the design are of a good standard, such as innovative design practices, such as solar panels, EV charging points. However, we do consider, as outlined in the report, that the design is very box-like, quite blocky, and really doesn't meet the bars set in the NPPF to be exceptionally good to be justified to recommend it for approval. In addition, we also consider that the impact of the landscape setting, it would be detrimental to the area in terms of it would result in an incongruous form of development. The area is surrounded by very attractive farmland, agriculture, and open countryside where local vernacular prevails. This would result in a very modern, brutalist design, modernist design that would jar the countryside, and we feel it doesn't meet the standards set down by the NPPF.
Any further questions?
Thank you. It is substantial, but the position is below the skyline. And I think it sits quite well. So I was just asking why and it's below the skyline and it's aligned with the landform. So I'm trying to get why you're saying it's
Through you,
not.
Chairman, I think that's a matter for you as members to debate. The officer report sets out quite clearly the assessment. There's no argument that the applicants have engaged, but we feel after quite a lengthy time of engagement, we don't feel that it's actually achieved that bar. And that is set out in the report and the consultation responses that you've had from your specialist services team, which comprises heritage, comprises design, comprises ecology and landscape as well. So members who've chosen to attend the site visit will have seen the site in its landscape. And there's two aspects to paragraph 84. One is achieving the design, being truly exceptional. The other is it's not an either or, it's an and. Does it significantly enhance the landscape setting? And that's the tests that we feel as officers that it hasn't quite achieved. But no, members are entitled to come to a different view when you come to debate it.
Thank you very much.
Councillor Breeze.
Thank you. Do you have an image of how the house sits in the landscape from a distance, perhaps from Pittsford or I know you showed us a couple of photos, but a sort of mock-up of how it fits in this very special landscape.
Yeah, but I won't be able to visualize it there. We've got this one there, I think.
I mean, that's clearly the view of the,
Sorry. Sorry, Eamon, that's the view of the south elevation, which obviously faces towards the reservoir. So obviously that's the principal elevation of the building, as you can see. So that's the elevation you would see if you're standing on the opposite side of the reservoir from the, say, for example, from Pittsford Dam, looking across the reservoir. That's kind of the main facade that you would see from a distance, from long distance views.
Okay, so there isn't one. I think that one's taken from the garden, which is a quite different view. But
That's
it's
right, yes,
quite
from the garden,
important
yeah.
to see what it would perhaps be like from the other side of the.
That's taken from the opposite side of the reservoir there, looking from a long distance across to the site.
Yeah, that's just the site though, not with a. Okay, there isn't one in the pack that we could.
There's nothing more in the presentation other than you've seen tonight.
No, I mean on the website.
On the planning portal, there's a 243 page document,
Yeah,
which
but
has all the concept photos in there.
but that's what that's what I'd like to see on the screen
Yeah.
rather than
I don't know if that's something we can bring up at all.
having to wade through.
No, okay, no, it's not available, I'm afraid. Okay, are there any further questions from the committee? Okay, we will now move on to public speaking in the following order. So we have a written statement from Brixworth Parish Council.
Thank you, Chair. I will now read the statement submitted on behalf of Brixworth Parish Council. Dear Chair and members of the committee, representatives from Brixworth Parish Council are unable to attend today's meeting, but wish to record its position regarding the above application. The Parish Council does not support this application. Our Planning Committee considered the proposal carefully at its meeting in September 2024 and resolved unanimously that the application fails to meet the criteria of paragraph 84E of the National Planning Policy Framework. Specifically, the committee concluded that design does not significantly enhance its immediate setting and is not sensitive to the defining characteristics of the local area. These concerns were reaffirmed at our most recent meeting on the 1st of June 2026, where members noted that the independent design review experts also found the proposal did not meet the design standards required under paragraph 84E. The Parish Council therefore maintains its previous position that the proposal falls short of the exceptionally high bar set for isolated dwellings in the countryside. The design is considered overly dominant and discordant in its rural context and does not reflect the highest standards of architecture or contribute positively to the local landscape. For these reasons, Brixworth Parish Council respectfully ask the committee to refuse the application in accordance with the officer's recommendation. And that concludes the statement of Brixworth Parish Council. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. We now have a written statement from Councillor Jonathan Harris, who's the local ward member.
Thank you, Chair, and I will now read that statement in turn. And so begins the statement. Dear Chair, members of the committee, apologies that I can't be at this committee meeting in person due to a long-standing commitment this evening. I called this application in on behalf of Brixworth Parish Council following their request for me to do so at one of their planning committee meetings. I would firstly like to thank the officer for the detailed and comprehensive report and would urge committee members to align with the officer's report and refuse this application. As noted within the report, the key issues arising from the application details are principle of development, specifically if the proposal meets the tests under paragraph 84E of the NPPF, impact on amenity, highways, access and parking, biodiversity and landscape, and flooding and drainage. It should be noted that the location of this site is extremely close to the site of site of special scientific interest. Brixworth Parish Council undertook, with the support of West Northamptonshire Council, a local housing needs assessment for the parish in 2024, which concluded that local need for 31 affordable homes was there. This particular proposal does nothing to support this particular local need. Furthermore, the existing Brixworth Neighbourhood Development Plan 2016, amended 2021 and spanning until spring 2029, states the following. Development will only be permitted in the open countryside if it, 1, contributes to the local rural economy, 2, is for the reuse or extension of an existing building, 3, is a sport or recreation, 4, is for an isolated dwelling in the special circumstances identified in paragraph 79 of the 2019 National Planning Policy Framework, now of course updated by the 2024 NPPF as paragraph 84E. In reviewing this application, I particularly urge committee members to take note of the key paragraphs of the officer's report: 7.31.1, 7.31.2, 7.33 and 7.42. They can be found on pages 50 to 52 of the committee papers. The building design does not conclusively demonstrate a sensitive to or respond to positively to the defining characteristics of the local area. The scheme would represent a substantial change to the character and appearance of the application site, but would not significantly enhance its immediate setting, whilst impacting on views in and out of the area in the wider rural setting. The proposal fails to meet the 2 strands of paragraph 84E, and the site therefore is not considered to be a suitable location for new residential development, having regard to the development plan and whether or not the proposal constitutes an individual dwelling of exceptional quality. The officer clearly sets out in paragraph 7.43 of his report the relevant planning policies that must be considered. H1, BN9, policy R1 of the West Northamptonshire Joint Core Strategy, policies H08 and ENV10 of the Daventry District Settlements and Countryside Part 2 Local Plan, policy RA6 of the same plan, and policy 2 of the Development Plan, Neighbourhood Development Plan, which contains provisions to protect the amenity of future occupiers of the development and neighbouring properties. Chapter 12 of the National Planning Policy Framework, Achieving Well-Designed Place, states the design is of exceptional quality in that it is truly outstanding, reflecting the highest standards in architecture, and would help to raise the standards of design more generally in rural areas, and would significantly enhance its immediate setting and be sensitive to the defining characteristics of the local area. It is worth noting that albeit each and every application should be considered on its own merits, another paragraph 84 application recently failed to obtain permission as a result of failing Part E of the NPPF, paragraph 84. This area around Pittsford Reservoir is a particular hotspot for paragraph 84 applications, and it is crucial that all applications pass subsection E of the NPPF, which states the design is only of exceptional quality if it is truly outstanding, reflecting the highest standards in architecture, and would help to raise the standards of design more generally in rural areas, and would significantly enhance its immediate setting and be sensitive to the defining characteristics of the local area. In order to, quote, significantly enhance its immediate setting, a design would need to be designed to add or to complement the local landscape and would not have significant impact on the surrounding area. This design does not complement the local landscape and would have a negative impact on the surrounding area. For a design to be sensitive to the defining characteristics of the local area, the design should respond to the character and context of the local area, with cues taken from local building styles and reinterpreting them, or from local systems of construction, and respond sensitively to the site's topography and geology, and make references to the site's history. This design does none of those things. In summary, myself, Brixworth Parish Council and officers have arrived at the same overall conclusion, that being the proposal is unacceptable for the single reason set out by the officer as stated in the report. Thank you for listening to my comments on this application, and I ask that members follow officer's advice and refuse this application. And that concludes the statement of Councillor Jonathan Harris, Ward Member for Brixworth. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. We now move on to Kevin Brown, who's an architect on behalf of the applicants. If you press the button on the microphone, it should come on.
Yes, thank you for allowing me to speak tonight. Yes, I'm the architect for the scheme.
Sorry.
I've had a lot of experience of.
Can you just move the microphone a little bit closer? Sorry.
Sorry, is that better? Yeah, of paragraph 84s all over the country. Personally, I've got something like 20 odd approvals through. So I'm well versed in what's required for paragraph 84E. Why are the defining characteristics which have been mentioned here so important? You'll have seen from your site visit the other day when you went onto site, a landscape that has been mentioned here that looks very attractive, meadows which are leading down towards the water, but it isn't the Lake District. This lake that we all talk about and we all see was actually only created in the 1950s by the insertion of a huge dam and a huge engineering works that created the landscape you see around you. So it's actually only been there for a very short time. And the lake itself, of course, isn't a lake, it's a reservoir for supplying water to the local area. And around the lake, there is a margin of roughly 30-meter margin all the way around the lake, which excludes properties or anybody from accessing directly onto the lake itself. Prior to the dam, the landscape wasn't just a valley that was flooded. It also, too, during the Industrial Revolution from the 17th, 18th century onwards, was a landscape of quarries. In fact, the land which the client owns had a quarry on it, virtually where the site sits. And there were railways, there were wagonways, and the remnants of those are still evident in the landscape. So we don't see a landscape that's historic in any respect here. It's entirely man-made, it's created. The field patterns which we see, of course, have all been altered over time. And many of the fields have been substantially enlarged and feed now down towards the reservoir. One of the problems of the agricultural farming that goes on around the reservoir has emerged from the discussions we've had with Anglian Water is that a lot of the pollutants from the fields run down into the reservoir. This scheme, by putting a building here and doing work to the two fields either side, will actually capture the pollutants that come down from the fields beyond and prevent them from going into the reservoir, creating reed beds and managing the water. So it's much larger than just a building that we're doing here. It's actually a very holistic approach to the whole site and the farm itself. The defining characteristics are a key part, obviously, of paragraph 84E. And together with the other clauses of paragraph 84E, the building directly does reflect the defining characteristics that I've just spoken of. The villages of Pittsford and Brixworth are both defined by ironstone buildings with large walls which run through the villages, as you all know from the historic centres of villages. And these large ironstone walls we've managed to use in this building to create the base of the buildings, the plinth of the building. It grounds it, it allows it to tie it to the earth. Above that, the larger modernist elements directly reflect the industrial heritage of the area. The industrial heritage and the reservoir itself, the brutalist elements, as have been mentioned, which created the reservoir buildings. Many of the reservoir buildings are 1950s, 1960s buildings, and they reflect modernism. So you have a direct marriage between the historic elements, which are the wall, the reference to the local area, and above them sitting these modernist elements. And it's clearly an element which has then gone on to define the characteristic of the building. So the building is directly grown from this site. This building couldn't be transposed and dropped in anywhere else. It only exists here on that one site. Obviously, we have substantially engaged with the design and review panel throughout for about an 18-month, nearly 2-year process. And we met the panel on 3 separate occasions. We've engaged with them for many hours and many days, in fact. Whereas with the officers themselves, we've only actually had 1 meeting with the design officer. And the panel itself is made up, as you.
Can you conclude your statements, please?
Sorry,
Can you conclude your statements, please?
continue.
Conclude.
Yes. The panel itself is made up of a group of professionals. There's 6 that sit on the panel at the moment that looked at this scheme throughout those 3 review processes and allowed the scheme to evolve in accordance with what the requirements were. So what the panel did consider directly that it met the requirements of NPPF, paragraph 84E.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Just remain seated for a moment. Does
Oh,
anybody
yes.
have any questions? Councillor
Yes.
McMurtry?
Yeah, thanks for that. I think you've done a pretty good job at defining how you think it's sensitive to the defining characteristics of the local area. I'd like to hear sort of your opinions on how you think it would significantly enhance the immediate setting and also what makes it truly outstanding as to, comply with, 84E of the LPPF, sorry.
Yes. In terms of what makes it truly outstanding, well, in order to satisfy the defining characteristics, that normally is a direct relationship to something that's truly outstanding. An outstanding architectural piece or an outstanding piece will reflect the defining characteristics of the area from which it comes, and it directly does that. The I mean, I'm the architect, so obviously I've got a relationship with the scheme, but we present the scheme as a team. I mean, we've got landscape architect, we've got sustainability consultants, arboriculturalists, so a whole series of people and ecologists that have looked at this scheme in detail. So I have to satisfy a group of other professionals that the scheme met the criteria of paragraph 84E. And we managed to do that. I have had schemes where we haven't done that. So it's not a shoe-in that, you get an approval. You actually really have to work hard to get the piece of paper, a letter that a panel will issue at the end of that process. So I consider it, obviously, it's truly outstanding, and the panel considered it that it was truly outstanding. And to be sensitive to defining characteristics, again, yes, what was the other part?
Sorry.
Right, yes, in terms of the immediate setting, but it doesn't just have to enhance in architectural terms. It can be allowed to enhance in other terms. So we're improving the biodiversity by substantially. We're also, as I mentioned, we're controlling the water runoff from the farmland. So we're enhancing the setting. Again, by doing that, we're improving ecology and sustainability, bird life, insect, all of that. So it's a very broad tablet that you're trying to do. It's not just an architectural piece, that you're presenting here a scheme that's very, very diverse.
Yeah, but do you think visibly as well it enhances the area? And
Absolutely.
why is that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, I think it does that simply because it meets those defining characteristics. It's a building of its time, and it will become in future years one of the listed buildings in the area, I'm sure. Many do. Many of these paragraph 84Es do. I mean, they are rare things throughout over the country. And the panel that we've used reviews schemes over the whole country, not just the local Midlands area. I mean, we've done them all the way from the Scottish borders down to the southwest, and the panel handle all of those. So that diverse knowledge allows them to assess the scheme and ensure that it meets the criteria.
Okay, well, thank you.
Any further questions, Daniel? Councillor Rainbird, sorry.
Yep.
What engagement have you had with the parish council, Brixworth Parish Council?
Ourselves, we haven't directly spoken to the council themselves. We don't normally for a scheme when we present a scheme, we'd normally allow that to come through the officers. Sometimes officers are invited along to design panel meetings, but it's obviously, they're long meetings. They take a whole day. The first meeting we have with the panel takes a whole day. So they really know the site. They really understand it. And that first meeting is a long day. So we hardly ever get a planning officer who can't afford to commit their time to come along to the meetings. And it didn't happen in this case. In fact, it has happened on others. And we welcome that if they come along to the meeting.
Would you have not seen it as beneficial to contact the parish council yourselves, as it does contradict the neighbourhood development plan?
It's not something we would normally do because, of course, the planning.
One moment, just we'll get another microphone. There's 2 spare ones there. That can you...
Grab the 2 spare.
Those 2. Or that one.
Yeah, that one. Okay, thanks. Yeah. Yes. As I say, it's the consultation process for a paragraph 84A normally comes through the planning authority itself, and there was no requirement made by the planners themselves, the officers, to go and engage with the parish council itself. We're not normally invited along to parish council meetings anyway. I've only ever done it, I think, out of all the schemes I've ever done, once. It's very rare.
Cheers, thank you.
Any further questions from the committee? Councillor Beryl?
Thank you, Chair. I actually attended the site visit and the land does undulate quite well. So I understand why you've tucked it in. But one of my questions is, during the panel reviews, was WNC involved? Were the officers involved at all? Did they attend, or is it with WNC?
We had one meeting with the planning officer on site. On one day, we walked to the site with him from the adjacent Grange farm, which the client also owns, and that was it.
Thank you. Thank you.
So it's a very brief discussion.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions? No. Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
We now have Stephen Whale, who's the agent for the applicants.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, members, officers. So I'm a barrister by profession, speaking on behalf of the applicant. And everyone agrees that paragraph 84E is the key policy in this case, and that planning permission should be granted if you're satisfied that the design is of exceptional quality. Obviously, as the saying goes, beauty's in the eye of the beholder. And the same could be said for design. There's obviously a subjective element to design, but it's not a purely subjective matter. There are experts in design, just as there are experts in law and medicine, accountancy, many other walks of life. And the government's national planning policy recognises this. I'm just going to touch on a couple of paragraphs of the NPPF. So paragraph 138 says that councils such as yours should have regard to the outcome of the processes for assessing and improving the design of development, and I quote, including any recommendations made by design review panels. And the next paragraph, 139, says that significant weight should be given to outstanding or innovative designs, and you've already heard from officers about the innovative aspects of this design. And if I may say so, Councillor Furman was bang on the point right at the outset when he mentioned that this application has been through precisely the kind of design assessment that national policy envisages. I'm talking about the DRP, of course, It's not just any old panel, it's nationwide. It's reviewed projects from over 150 council areas. And this council is familiar with the DRP. Last year, this council approved a proposal in Naseby that had been assessed by the DRP, which is independent and impartial and expert. And as I say, and as I'm sure you know, which assessed this application not just once, not twice, but 3 times. And the panel members visited and they provided their feedback, and they concluded ultimately that the paragraph 84E tests are met, and they put that in writing, and they followed that up with another letter in writing last week. And as Mr. Brown mentioned, there were no less than 6 people on the DRP panel. A town planner of some 30 years experience, works for another local authority, 3 highly qualified architects, 2 highly qualified landscape architects. And I tried to put together their cumulative years of experience, and it's frankly decades and decades and decades. And as mentioned, they're a mix of people. We've got local authority members on the panel. We've got people in private practice. They're all volunteers. There's no financial conflict of interest. And as Mr. Brown mentioned, sometimes they approve schemes, sometimes they don't. They looked at this very, very rigorously indeed. And applying the NPPF, I would urge you, and I go back to what Councillor Furman said at the outset, I would urge you to have regard to the independent DRP conclusion and give significant weight to it. As you know, the DRP is not alone in its conclusion. There's a whole team of consultants supporting the applicant who share the DRP's conclusion. 2 neighbours have written in. They share the DRP conclusion. Notably, no neighbour has written in to say that they oppose. I'll just come back to the parish council, which has been touched on. I'm afraid to say their position is somewhat muddled. The statement that was read out earlier this evening includes this passage. The parish council say the independent design review experts found the proposal did not meet the design standards required under paragraph 84E. I'm afraid they're just simply wrong. They couldn't be more wrong. The DRP found the exact opposite. They found that it did meet the paragraph 84E test. So just bear that in mind, please, when you are thinking about what the parish council had to say. I come back to where I started, I suppose, and that is that government policy in the NPPF tells you to have regard to precisely the kind of process that this has been through, the rigorous process, the DRP's conclusion, and I'd urge you to share that conclusion and to grant approval.
Thank you very much.
Thank
Are there
you,
any
members.
questions from the committee? Councillor Furman.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you. When, beg my pardon, when members are assessing this application, how much weight do you think we should give to the DRP conclusion that paragraph 84 has been met?
I think you should give it significant weight, really for 2 reasons. Firstly, national policy says that you're to have regard to precisely this kind of process. That's the first point, or the first reason. And secondly, because of the nature of the DRP panel. 6 in number, independent, impartial, as I mentioned before, decades and decades of expertise on precisely this kind of matter. So I would say significant weight. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any further questions from the committee? No, thank you very much. Okay, at this point, are there any points you wish to come back on?
I would just come back on a point raised by Mr. Whale. Paragraph 138 of the NPPF states that the LPA should have regard to this interview panel. It does not say that the council should or are obliged to agree to this interview panel. I take on your point regarding the issue of the experience and number of people involved. However, the council also have their own design experts and also the specialist services team who have considerable experience at the same time.
Thank you. Okay, so we now move to the committee to now debate the item. We'll start with Councillor McMurtry.
Yeah, I'd just like to seek officer's opinion on, if we were to follow the advice and reject this, do you think this is going to hold up appeal if it's been independently, sort of approved by people with lots of experience in architecture and things like that? That's what I'm wondering about.
Through you, Chairman, that's the $60 million question. I mean, you've got experts on either side, experts employed by the council to assess the application. We've provided our advice. You've heard from experts this evening to say that you should give significant weight to the findings of the DRP. That's all part of the balance. Officers have had regard to the submissions and drawn a different conclusion. You're entitled to go against that, but as to whether or not it will succeed at appeal, that's a matter then for the planning inspector.
Councillor Smith.
Thank you. I've taken on board the comments made by the speakers and recognise the points that they've made in terms of the architectural side of things. However, I do feel the points made in the report from the officer's point of view in that actually the predominant buildings that are present at this site currently tend to be the 19th century style rather than the more brutalish style that's proposed here. I think the other element, we've heard about two neighbours, but I think it's important to remember that Pitsford is a site not just of scientific interest, but a hugely key part of the well-being of residents of Northampton and the wider West Northants area. So in a way, there's a huge number of stakeholders who use Pitsford as a means of well-being, as an access to well-being, as an access to really valuable countryside, and the experience of being able to access countryside and the sense. I recognise what's been said about the history of the site. However, I think for most people now, what it represents is a place of nature and connection to nature and well-being, and that is also part of the history of the way in which reservoirs, when they were created with one purpose of providing water, also took on these hugely significant elements of well-being and connection to well-being for members of the local area, and often for people who live in areas that are not so much that aren't the countryside, who live in very urban areas. Places like Pitsford are their access to countryside and to nature and to connection. And I think it's really important that how they experience it and the impact that potentially quite a more brutalist style of property might have on the way that they experience that area is significant. And I do think that Councillor Harris's points around what happens if that bar is allowed to shift at all, or if there's any concern that it might not meet that really high bar, what it means in terms of what might happen with other sites in the area and other potential properties. So for those reasons, I would be inclined to support the officer's recommendation for refusal.
Councillor Cartwright.
Thank you, Chair. Through you, I keep looking at this paragraph 84E. Is it truly outstanding? Reflect the highest standards in architecture, raise the standards of design. And I'm looking at it. I'm looking at the pictures. I've heard the explanation of how it will fit together, drawn from the local setting for the second part of it, and I'm looking at it and I'm thinking that it absolutely does, in my opinion. And I'm looking at policy RA6, and it says, point 3 is individual dwellings of exceptional quality or innovative design. Well, it looks exceptional quality to me. The innovative mixing of the three architectural styles with reflection of local buildings in the area, I think it does meet that. So I'm struggling to see how it shouldn't be approved. I mean, when we were at the site visit, you could see where it was set. It's probably not going to be visible directly from a lot of the area. I mean, I've been around Pittsford many times, and the way it fits in, the way it's broken up with the living green walls and the other landscape architecture that's, you know, on the plans to put in place there. It looks a fantastic design, and I can't see where you would put that building and it wouldn't enhance the area, it wouldn't improve it, be an impact on it. As far as I can see, I think, you know, it would significantly enhance immediate setting wherever you put that, and I think certainly there with the different local architecture styles and the enhanced B&G. So I would be leaning towards the other way and approving this.
Councillor Rainbird, then Councillor Beryl.
I'd just like to say that obviously paragraph 84E of the MPBF is the main deciding factor on this application. And I'd just like to say it's very subjective, a very subjective paragraph, open to anyone's eye view, like the agent of the applicant said, it's in the eye of the beholder. But I can't see it meeting paragraph 84E. It also goes against the neighbourhood development plan. Obviously, I've heard no one mention that. So yeah, I'm inclined to go with officer's recommendation and refuse this application.
Councillor Beryl.
Thank you, Chair. What I think is really important on these applications is actually attending these site visits. No one likes these Article 84 applications, in my opinion. But after the site visit, the land undulates quite well. It is tucked in, so half of the building is actually built within. And as long as we can somehow condition it in terms of making sure that they hit all the criteria of the screening as per drawing, I also don't see or have a problem with this application committee. Thank you.
Councillor Murtry.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sort of leaning towards that end of the spectrum as well. I mean, you know, I think it's purposely written as subjective. So things like this can be debated, but, you know, to me, it does look outstanding. I kind of agree with Councillor Cartwright and Beryl. Yeah, so yeah, I'm leaning more to going against officer's recommendation personally.
Okay, so does anyone wish, do you wish to?
Yeah,
Okay,
thank you.
Councillor Breeze.
I have found the a viewpoint that I asked about, and I'm looking at it now, and it's certainly outstanding in that it stands out, but having been involved in various Section 84 applications over the years, it doesn't hit me as being an outstanding building such as we've had in Northamptonshire, South Hampshire in the past. So I have to say, having read the officer's report and particularly of the conservation officers and others, I'm tending to go with the officer's recommendation.
Okay. Councillor Rainbird.
If no one else has anything more to say, I'd like to move to a proposal. I would go with officer's recommendation for refusal.
Okay, you were going to second that. Okay, so got Councillor Smith as a seconder.
Thank you, Chair. It's proposed by Councillor Rainbird and seconded by Councillor Smith that the application be refused in accordance with the recommendation for the refusal reasons as set out in the report. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, can I see all those in favour of the proposal?
Four in favour.
Yep.
Can we clear show of hands, please?
Yep.
Four in favour.
And those against? Okay, so that's falls, yep. Okay, do we have an alternative proposal from the committee? Councillor Rainbird, Beryl, sorry.
Thank you, Chair. I propose we go against officer's recommendation and approve this application.
Okay, do we have a seconder for this? Councillor Furman, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. For a proposal to approve contrary to the case officer's recommendation, it would be a two-part resolution. Firstly, that the committee delegates authority to the Director of Planning to grant permission to the development, and that we also grant delegated authority to officers to agree a set of conditions to facilitate the delivery of the development. Are you happy with that summary?
Yes, thank you, Chair, as long as they adhere to the screening. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Chair.
Okay. Can I see a show of hands in favour of the proposal by councillor Beryl, please?
6,
Those against?
4,
And any abstentions? No. Okay, so that's been approved.
approved.
Do we want to take a short break at this time just to, yeah, we'll take a 5-minute comfort break. Okay, we'll now be moving on to item 8, which is the land to the east of Charwelton Road, Badby. I will now hand over to the case officer, Rebecca Bates, to begin the presentation.
Thank you, Chairman. Good evening. This application is seeking outline planning permission, all matters reserved, except for access for the construction of up to 49 dwellings, public open space, including a play area, associated drainage, landscaping, internal roads, utilities, and other service infrastructure. The application site comprises approximately 3.37 hectares of land to the western edge of Badby village. It sits immediately adjacent to the settlement boundary of Badby, but falls outside the village confines, with an area defined as open countryside. The site currently comprises of pasture land, with the plot elevating further south, which is consistent with the rolling hill nature of this area. The northern and eastern site boundaries are lined with established tree and hedgerow planting and the A361. The existing field access provides pedestrian access via a public right-of-way that enters through the site and runs to the southern boundary and beyond towards Badby village. The application site lies within the Catesby and Fawsley Special Landscape Area. The Badby Conservation Area lies adjacent to the eastern edge of the site, with 2 Grade 2 listed buildings, residential gardens adjoining the site. Although the application is for outline permission, this illustrative plan shows the area in which development would be located, the vehicular access from the A361, and pedestrian and cycle connectivity to the A361 near the old telephone exchange. A green, orchard, buffer planting, and a play area are proposed, along with an attenuation pond to the north. This slide shows the relationship between the site and the Badby Conservation Area and nearby listed buildings. The proposed access will extend from the A361 towards the southern edge of the application site, with pedestrian and cycle access along a 3-metre footway and cycle path with a 0.5-metre buffer to Pinfold Green near the old telephone exchange. It should be noted the local highway authority have objected to the proposal due to insufficient information to demonstrate that safe and suitable access can be achieved for all users in accordance with the National Planning Policy Framework. The applicant's application site is an outline application, is categorised as open countryside. As the council cannot demonstrate a 5-year land supply, the tilted balance is engaged in line with the National Planning Policy Framework. It is noted that the proposal will provide up to 49 dwellings, in which will provide policy-compliant 40% affordable dwellings. However, it is the opinion of the case officer that this does not outweigh the harm to the landscape and heritage assets and features which would arise as a result of this development. As highlighted within the Badby Neighbourhood Development Plan and Conservation Area Appraisal Management Plan for Badby, the settlement of Badby has a historic secluded character due to the surrounding topography and is well screened from view by lie of the land. Any development within this location would significantly alter the visual aspect of the village and diminish the historic secluded character. The application site, while also benefits from Ridge and Furrow, a non-designated heritage asset, has been identified as making a significant contribution to the rural setting of the conservation area. Therefore, it is the recommendation of the case officer that this application is refused for the reasons set out in the report. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions from the committee at this stage? No, okay. We'll now move on to the public speaking in the following order. Kirsten Dollery, a local resident.
Good evening. I speak on behalf of residents of Badby who wholly endorse WNC's recommendation to refuse this application. And for complete transparency, I own Home Farm House, a Grade 2 listed property that borders the site. Badby residents would like to emphasise the following points. On the village setting, Badby is a compact village, historically nestled in a landscape formed of rolling hills, valleys and woodland, and well screened by the surrounding topography. This proposal would shatter that character. By placing up to 49 houses on this elevated pasture, an area designated as open space OS 10 that makes a significant contribution to the rural setting of our conservation area, the development would become a visually dominant addition to the landscape. It would fundamentally erode Badby's historic secluded character and destroy protected views D and E identified in our neighbourhood plan. The proposal is not a modest extension to the village, it is an unjustified encroachment. It fails to conserve the natural beauty of the special landscape area and the linked triple SI of Badby Woods. On heritage, an independent expert assessment by Dr. Paul Stamper concluded that this development would cause substantial harm to our ancient medieval ridge and ferry landscape, and harm to the setting, character and form of the village itself, to the conservation area and to the listed buildings adjacent to the site. The applicant's heritage report downplays this impact as a low level of harm to a non-designated heritage asset. WNC's own heritage and conservation team, acting here as an adjudicator, agrees with the assessment made by Dr. Stamper. And critically, both Dr. Stamper and the WNC's heritage officer performed full on-site surveys, including the curtilage of the impacted listed buildings. They also reviewed historic deeds and documents held by residents pertaining to the setting of those buildings and the conservation area. The applicant's heritage team did not. On connectivity to the village, Badby's layout centres around beautiful village greens and is likely of early medieval origin. All more recent developments to the village have respected that layout, and they face inwards to the village centre, creating cohesion and community. The only direct link from the proposed development to the village is via public footpath EB3. The route is legally inaccessible to cyclists, is physically impassable for pushchairs, wheelchairs, or residents with mobility impairments due to its uneven surface, steep gradients, and 3 styles. Minor on-site modifications cannot resolve the critical constraints. These include third-party land ownership and narrow stretches restricted by Grade 2 listed stone walls. Furthermore, the path is unlit and lacks natural surveillance, raising significant safety concerns. The footpath is fundamentally unviable as a sustainable link to the village centre and leaves the development effectively isolated and requiring access by the A361. On residential amenity, for the residents of Pound Lane and Pinfold Green, the impact of this development will be severely overbearing. The introduction of a continuous line of 2-storey buildings on rising land will result in a direct loss of natural light, outlook and privacy for 24 properties that share that boundary. The development of the site will replace a tranquil rural boundary with persistent intrusive noise and artificial light that the applicant's purely illustrative buffers cannot mitigate. And we ask that the council uphold their duty to protect the amenity and the well-being of existing residents. On biodiversity and ecology, our objections relate to ecology to deficient input data. The applicant's ecologist relied on the Northamptonshire Biodiversity Record Centre, which held only 5 records for Badby at the time of the assessment. An absence of data is not an absence of biodiversity. Badby residents have since initiated a local project to close this gap, and we've provided verified sightings backed by photographic evidence of species of principal importance as per the Natural Environment and Rural Communities Act 2006. And these are in habitats immediately adjacent to and linked with the site. And I should note that this isn't just citizen science, this is backed principally by me as a main instigator of this community project, and I hold a PhD in methods of quantifying biodiversity at landscape scale. And under NPPF 186, once a developer is aware of the protected species in linked habitats such as hedgerows, they must be accounted for in the mitigation hierarchy. So far, the applicant has failed to do so. So in conclusion, the proposal represents an unsustainable development that fails the core principles of local and national planning policy and the Badby Neighbourhood Plan. The cumulative adverse impacts, the permanent destruction of irreplaceable heritage, the creation of a car-dependent enclave, the erosion of character, setting and distinctiveness of this historic village, and the detrimental effect on existing residents significantly and demonstrably outweigh any perceived benefits. We respectfully ask that the committee uphold the planning officer's expert opinion and refuse permission. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions from the committee for the speaker? No, thank you very much. We now have Linda Clow on behalf of Badby Parish Council.
Thank you, Chair. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Excellent. I'm just following on from the comments made by my colleague, and I'm here today to represent Badby Parish Council. Badby Parish Council welcomes the WNC report recommending rejection of the application. The information contained in that report mirrors our concerns and covers them in far more detail than we can achieve here today, and we endorse it. That said, it's worth reiterating some salient points. The applicants have failed to show demonstrable need for this development. The proposed number of houses are not needed, and they would be in an unsustainable rural location with no amenities. Private transport would be required to go anywhere. The bus service is extremely limited, and the nearest train station is some 13 miles away. There are no dedicated cycle facilities or routes to higher order service centres, such as Daventry or Byfield. Cyclists wishing to access these higher order service centres would be forced onto the A361, a 50-mile-per-hour road with high traffic volumes and limited visibility, which expert reports describe as a threatening and unsafe experience. There are major concerns about the safety aspects of the proposed junction for vehicles into and out of the development onto the busy A361. The proposal for a new T-junction sited on a hill heading north and immediately before a bend would cause incredulity at any level. It is obvious that this is potentially dangerous and totally inappropriate in that setting. We are very glad that Highways Department also has serious concerns and reservations around this proposal. In addition, the suggestion that cyclists and pedestrians can share a narrow path alongside the 361 to access Badby Village is potentially dangerous and totally impractical. There would be almost total reliance on the use of a car or cars excuse me, within each household to reach even the most basic amenities. Add in the uncertainty regarding interest rates, high rents, potential maintenance charges for the site if the council choose not to adopt it, then the houses could never be considered low cost, affordable or sustainable. Flooding concerns have not been sufficiently addressed. Whilst the site itself is not an issue, there is the potential for properties downstream to flood if the site drainage and containment measures fail. Lack of clarity surrounding who will be responsible for the ongoing maintenance of the drainage systems outlined is a major concern in this regard. The latest submission from the applicant deals with roads and outdoor spaces on the development, but still does not address the requirements for maintenance of all the drainage facilities into the future. In summary, I'd like to tell you a little bit about Badby. It's a secondary village, only by virtue of the fact that we have a school. There is a pub and a small place to get coffee now, but that is it. No shop for basic needs, no medical facilities, nothing. The only bus service finishes before 7 every night, and there is no service on a Sunday. It is a small village with a huge heritage. Far from enhancing, as the applicant suggests, this proposed development has the potential to destroy it. The applicant has made much of the fact that development should receive approval because certain conditions have not been met, and our neighbourhood plan, though still current, is coming to the end of its lifespan. Convenient technical loopholes. As elected members will know, the local plan is currently being developed, and we have been advised that we need to potentially build 29 properties in Badby between now and the 2040s, some 15 years or so away. We already have outline planning permission for 5 in the centre of the village, so net 24 are required, not 49, and certainly not in this sensitive location. Badby Parish Council are already beginning to work with residents and updating our neighbourhood plan to reflect the local plan and other issues going forward. We do not resist change, we embrace it, unless it is detrimental to the overall welfare of all in our village. Then we will object strongly. This proposed development has the potential to uplift the number of residences by 17%, a huge unsustainable increase that would change the nature of our beautiful village forever if allowed. I would like to finish where I started by thanking WNC again for their excellent report and for recommending refusal. It only remains for me to respectfully urge this committee to support that recommendation and reject the application. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions from the committee? No, thank you very much. We now have a verbal statement from Councillor Charlie Hasty, who's the local ward member.
Good evening, Chair. Good evening, committee members. Thank you. Through you, Chair, this is actually a joint statement by myself and my co-ward councillor, Rupert Frost. Thank you, Chair. We absolutely welcome the recommendation made by officers on this case. Some of what I'm going to say tonight had already been said by residents, and I'm here to also reflect the level of concern that we've had from residents and correspondence from them and the parish council. This application has obviously caused considerable local concern. The report confirms near unanimous opposition and concludes that the proposal is contrary to the NPPF, the adopted local plan, Daventry Local Plan Part 2, and we'd also highlight the Badby Neighbourhood Plan 2019. The highways concerns alone present a clear and compelling case for refusal. As set out in detail in section 5.1 of the report, the local highway authorities concluded that the proposed access is both unsuitable and unsafe. We are confident, and I know this is a 60 million pound comment, should an appeal be pursued, an inspector would reach the same conclusion. Specifically, the applicant has failed to demonstrate that safe and suitable access can be achieved for all users, NPPF 115B. Pedestrian and cycle movements have been prioritised, NPPF 117A. The development would not result in an unacceptable impact on highway safety, NPPF 116. The proposed priority T-junction with a right turn lane raises several unresolved and serious issues. No justification has been provided for omitting a left turn deceleration lane. No swept path analysis demonstrating safe simultaneous two-way movements for cars and service vehicles. And no assessment of the impact on existing access points opposite the site. The potential sideswipe and shunt collision risks due to conflicting turning movements, and also the failure to adopt or justify the Stage 1 road safety audit recommendation for a central refuge with keep right signage. In addition, the proposal requires culverting of a frontage ditch, yet compliance with drainage requirements has not been demonstrated. The transport evidence is also incomplete. Only summary speed data has been submitted rather than the full automatic traffic counter data set. And given the high recorded speeds and the 50-mile-an-hour limit, visibility displays must be based on 85th percentile speeds in line with the DMRB standards, not manual for streets 2. As the LHA clearly states, this approach is not accepted where DMRB standards are applicable. Even if weight is given to housing need, the emerging West Northamptonshire Local Plan Regulation 18, January 2026, proposes only 29 new homes in Badby up to 2043 and to be delivered through appropriate infill development with safe and suitable access. This speculative scheme does not align with that strategy. And in summary, the planning report provides clear and robust reasons why this application is not policy compliant, and therefore we strongly urge members to refuse permission as per recommendation from officers. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Are there any questions from the committee? No, thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, councillors.
We now have Ben Jones, who's the agent for the applicant.
Chair, members of the committee, my name is Ben Jones. I'm a chartered surveyor and I'm a director of the applicant. Now, over the last 2 years, we've invested significant time and resource in bringing forward this proposal, including engaging in extensive pre-application discussions with West Northants Highways and the LLFA in respect to flooding and drainage. We have undertaken highways assessments, drainage investigations, ecological surveys, winter landscape work, and extensive engagement with local residents, parish representatives and ward councillors. At every stage, we have sought to respond positively to feedback and improve the scheme. Most recently, just a few weeks ago, at the request of the county archaeologist, we commissioned and completed trial trenching works to further inform the application. Now, whilst the officer has made her own assessment, I respectfully ask members to apply a different planning balance here. The heritage impacts are agreed to amount to a less than substantial harm. The landscape impacts arise on a site contained by existing development on one side and the A361 on the other, creating a strong and defensible village edge. Against that, members are being asked to weigh the delivery of 49 affordable homes delivered in partnership with East Midlands Homes, one of the region's longest standing housing associations, in an area with a clear and pressing housing need. Members, this application asks a simple question. What kind of future do we want for villages like Badby? Badby is one of the most sustainable villages in this part of West Northants. It has a great primary school, a pub, community facilities, established footpaths, a good bus service, excellent links to Daventry. Importantly, this site represents the only logical direction for the village to grow, which your own draft local plan seeks it to do, by allocating 29 dwellings to Badby, in addition to the 11 not delivered during the last plan period. The site is connected to the existing settlement, well contained and capable of integrating naturally into the village. This is not isolated or sprawling development, it is a logical extension to the settlement. Now, members will know that successful villages cannot remain frozen in time. Without opportunities for younger people and local families to remain, villages gradually lose the very things that make them special. We're already seeing some of those pressures in Badby. In 2019, the village lost one of its pubs, the Windmill. At the primary school, only 3 of the 30 children in the current reception intake come from Badby, Everton or Forsley. The remaining places are being filled by children travelling in from elsewhere. Now, that's not a criticism of the school. It is a reflection of how difficult it has become for young families to access housing locally. See, Badby has seen very little meaningful housing growth in modern times. Without affordable homes, younger generations are increasingly priced out of the communities in which they grew up. That concern was reflected in our consultation. One resident told us, the village desperately needs smaller affordable housing so young families can stay and bring up their families without having to move to sprawling new out-of-town developments. Members, I appreciate there's opposition. There almost always is when change is proposed. But the question before you today is not whether change is difficult. It's whether this is the right development in the right location, delivering the right homes. We respectfully submit that it is. In just 1 month's time, this council will be marking Rural Affordable Housing Week. As you consider this application, I ask you to place significant weight on the opportunity before you. The chance to deliver 49 affordable homes supported by Homes England funding and in partnership with East Midlands Homes, local homes for local people who would otherwise struggle to access housing in this area. For those reasons, we respectfully ask you to apply a different planning balance here and seize this opportunity to deliver 49 affordable homes for local people in one of West Northamptonshire's most sustainable villages. Many thanks.
Thank you. Are there any questions from the committee? Councillor Rainbird.
I'd like to ask, what are you doing for foul and drainage concerning Anglian Water have objected to this application?
I think, and hopefully the officer will assist on this, a pre-application inquiry has taken place with Anglian Water. Anglian Water are satisfied. And I'm sure the officer will be prepared to provide an update on that.
So within the report, Anglian Water have said, although they object to any connection to their foul network, they do ask for a pre-development inquiry, which is a separate service to us, which the applicant or agent would engage with them, and then we'd get the following report as such. But they've also recommended conditions which would need to be added to any approval.
And sorry, just to clarify, that pre-development inquiry has taken place and Anglian are satisfied.
Councillor Cartwright.
Thank you, Chair. Mr Jones, a lot of affordable housing you want to build there. You're saying there's a lot of affordable housing you want to put there.
Correct.
What facilities are in the village for people then?
Sure. Well,
can we not call out, please?
I'm sorry. There's a primary school, a pub, a fantastic village hall, a play area. We're proposing to provide a play area. We've got links, pedestrian links back into the village. A very good bus service serves the village. It's I think it's a secondary service village. It's, you know, there's a draft allocation for 29 dwellings there. I think it does represent a sustainable settlement.
Thank you.
Are there any further questions? Councillor Rainbird?
What do you say to the local highway authority saying that there's insufficient information to demonstrate a safe and suitable access to the plot, if you'd like?
It's a fair question, and I have to say, we engaged in extensive. It was one of the first things we did. Extensive pre-application discussions with West Northants Highways. I was somewhat disappointed to only be presented with those comments and have seen them for the first time in the officer's report, because of course, you know, it's a departure from what was agreed during the pre-app discussions. And when you see comments like that in a report the week before you're in front of committee, there's very little you can do to address them. That said, we have taken Highways advice, and our Highways engineer has been in touch with West Northants Highways, and we are confident that those issues can be resolved. As I understand it, the Highways Authority wanted some updated vehicle tracking. Again, very straightforward to provide that, you know, so long as you're not asked to a week before committee. They'd like a revised road safety audit, again, very straightforward to provide. They'd like the inclusion of a central refuge, again, something which, had that been put to us at an appropriate stage, we would have provided, and we still would. And then actually, a comment which I totally agree with, they have proposed to extend the 40-mile-an-hour limit to the south of the site. Yeah, I agree, it's a good idea. And again, that's something we would take forward.
Thank you.
Any more questions? Councillor Breeze?
Thank you. Just clarification, you said that that's all affordable housing. So there's no market housing on the site at all?
That's correct. So we have a contract with East Midlands Homes. Should the site achieve a planning permission, East Midlands Homes will deliver it as a 100% affordable scheme.
And what's the proposed density of the site?
The density, God, you're testing my mathematical ability off the top of my head now in dwellings per hectare. I'm sure someone with a calculator would be able to help me out. But I suppose going to the heart of your question, when we look at a site, we assess all of the constraints first, try and understand, what is the developable area? What could we, where is the area that we could build on this site, having taken account of the landscape, the ecology, the drainage matters. And then the next step is, okay, well, what density would be appropriate? What would fit with the grain of the village? And that's what we've done here. And actually, when you look at the illustrative master plan, you can see where in that southeastern corner, where it does abut the conservation area, we've been very mindful of that. You've got the slightly larger dwellings, which are more spaced out with a buffer to that boundary. And so, I mean, going direct to the question, we've been very mindful to get the number of dwellings correct for this site.
And it's proposing a mix of 2 to 4 bedroom dwellings, including bungalows. I think there's a big shortage of 4-bedroom and larger social housing. So what sort of proposal of mixed dwellings are you making?
In terms of, well, I can speak on tenure mix. East Midlands Homes are proposing to take it forward as 35 dwellings for social rent and the remainder for shared ownership. So that's in respect of tenure mix.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions from the committee? No, thank you very much. Are there any points that the officers wish to come back on at this stage?
No, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. So we now move to the committee to debate the proposal. Councillor Cartwright.
Thank you, Chair. I would have liked the idea of some social rent and affordable homes, but that puts you in mind of, you know, that those people then would be restricted pretty much to the village area. And we seem to have heard, all right, there's a school and a pub and a play area, but, you know, your shopping, the other things that make life, you know, the amenities you would need for young families to have life don't seem to be in Badby. The last time I was there and looking again on maps, I can't see anything that would be there. I'm thinking of the loss of a amenity to the village and the harm to local heritage. Right, the tilted balance at the moment doesn't outweigh the harm according to our officers, and even highways have objected, which is a new one. So I would be tempted to go with the officer's recommendation on this, unless anyone can convince me otherwise.
Councillor Smith.
Yes, I'd be inclined to echo many of those comments. I know that it's been, notwithstanding taking all applications on their merits, other applications in this area have highlighted that there are not shopping facilities, post office facilities in this area. And again, for a large number of additional residents to be without those amenities doesn't feel appropriate. It's laid out quite clearly that the number of homes is not in line with what's viewed as necessary and appropriate in terms of development in this area. Is it the right place? Is it sustainable? And what is the impact and the harm? It's been laid out quite clearly that this isn't an appropriate site to look at this level and intensity of development. And it's really important to balance that and not create something that can't be undone without careful thought and consideration. And I think it's quite clearly laid out that that would not be appropriate in this case. So I would be inclined to agree with the officer's recommendation.
Thank you. Councillor Rainbird.
Yeah, going on jumping on the horse here. Obviously, the highways have objected, saying that they can't confirm a safe and suitable vehicular access. But obviously, speaking to the agent of the applicant, it seems like this conversation has not been had at pre-application stages. So I believe that would make an unfair judgment, considering we've not got all the information. The applicant is saying that they're more than happy to, that they feel like they can meet the expectations that we are setting out. But obviously the report says otherwise. So I'd just like to bear a bit of weight into that as well.
Does anyone else wish to add anything? Councillor McMurtry.
I mean, irrespective of that, I still think it does cause significant harm to landscape and character of the area. So, yeah, I think on balance, it's not an appropriate application personally for me. So, yeah, I'm in agreement with Councillor Smith and Cartwright here that we should follow officer's recommendation.
Councillor Cartwright, do you wish to add that?
Yeah, if no one's going to vote in favour or recommend in favour of that, I propose that we go with officer recommendations and refuse the application.
Okay. So that's the same proposal you're making. So you seconding Councillor McMurtry? Yeah. Okay. You wish to summarise?
Thank you, Chair. It's proposed by Councillor Cartwright, seconded by Councillor McMurtry, that the application be refused in accordance with the refusal reasons set out in the officer's report. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Can I see a show of hands in favour of the proposal?
So,
those against? Any abstentions?
2.
Okay, that's
Correction, that's 8 in favour, 2 abstentions.
Okay. So that's
refused.
Refused, yep. Now move on to item 9, which is the land of Maple Close, Braunston. I'll now hand over to the case officer, John Phillips, to begin the presentation. maybe more favourable.
Thank you, Chairman. The application site lies on the eastern edge of Braunston Village, which is actually a secondary service village. And I'll try start again. Is that better? I've used the loud voice. The application site lies on the eastern edge of Braunston Village, which is a secondary service village. And in accordance with their policies, the developments outside the confines of the village are permitted subject to criteria, one of which is that if there are exception sites. The application before members tonight is 100% affordable housing, which is an exception site, and it wholly aligns with the housing needs survey as well. You'll see from the report that there are very little objections to the application. There are a few objections from neighbours in regards to ecology and traffic and flooding as well. But equally, you also see that those concerns have been addressed by the technical consultees as well. There have been no objections from the parish council, and the provision of open space is actually in excess of what's required by our development contributions. And accordingly, we're recommending for approval subject to Section 106 to ensure that the affordable housing is secured in perpetuity and the public open space is also secured as well. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Are there any questions from the committee? No. Okay. So there are no public speakers on this one, so we will move directly to the, sorry. Okay. We'll move directly on to debate. Councillor Beryl.
Thank you, Chair. Judging on what's just been presented, it looks like natural progression. And if anyone else hasn't got anything to say, I say we approve the officer's recommendation. Approve that.
Any second that, Councillor McMurtry? Sorry, Councillor Smith, sorry. Do you wish to?
No, I would just agree with what's been proposed so far.
Okay. Do you wish to add something, Councillor Verman?
Yes, could I just ask one question, please?
You can.
The body open spaces, has the Section 106, who's going to take over the long-term maintenance? Is that going to be done by the developer, or has that been offered to the parish council?
Are you able to clarify that?
I can confirm that the parish council won't be taking over it. They've already confirmed to me in writing that that's the situation. So it will be taken and managed by a management company. And one of the conditions within the report does actually request that the details of a management company for the public open space.
Thank you very much.
Does anyone wish to add anything further, or should we summarise the proposal? Okay, let's summarise.
Thank you, Chair.
Sorry, did you wish to?
Sorry, just further to the question, the excellent question about the public open space and the company. Who is it proposed will ultimately pay for that company?
The company will pay for the management of it, yes.
The housing association?
The housing association, because they'll also pay for the part of the affordable housing. They'll also be maintaining that as well. So I'm assuming that the management company who manage the maintenance will also manage the maintenance of the public open space as well.
So there'll be no expectation of a service charge on the housing?
No, it's as far as this will be as part of the Section 106, which we're negotiating.
Okay, thank you.
Can I just to confirm, this is effectively the third phase of Maple Close, having been involved in the early stages. So it's been extended twice as an exception site. So it's fairly well established and fairly well managed to date. So no reason to question it.
Okay, are there any further comments? No, we'll summarise.
Thank you, Chair. On that basis, it's proposed by Councillor Beryl and seconded by Councillor McMurtry that the application be approved in accordance with the case officer's recommendations subject to the conditions as set out in the report and the requirements for the section 106.
Thank you. Can I see a show of hands in favour of councillor Beryl's proposal? And that's unanimous. It's been approved, thank you. Moving on to item 10, which is 1 Derby Road, Northampton. Yes. That's okay. I will now hand over to the case officer, Nathan Healy, to begin the presentation. Yeah,
Thank you, Chair. This application is for the change of use of a C3 dwelling to a HMO for 6 occupants, including single-storey rear and side extensions. The site is located within the Abington area of Northampton, located just over 60 metres from Kettering Road. As you can see on the screen now, the site consists of an end-of-terrace dwelling, which has a typical Victorian layout, i.e. with a protruding outrigger. Here are some photos of where the proposed extensions will be located. Here are the proposed elevations. Due to the extensions being single-storey, as well as their relationship with the neighbouring properties, they're considered to have no adverse impact on neighbour amenity and therefore acceptable. Turning to the change of use, the Northampton HMO SPD sets out the following 4 principles which have been used to assess this application. On screen now shows the local concentration map. It should be noted that there are inaccuracies within the map. As a result, consultation was done with the private sector Intel team, who clarified the status of 15 and 21 Derby Road. 15 Derby Road is currently a family dwelling. 21 Derby Road currently has a temporary exception notice, which expires on the 11th of June. Private sector housing have stated the landlord is working towards reinstating the original occupation of the property, which is obviously a C3 dwelling. When this background is considered alongside the Article 4, which covers Northampton, and there being no historic licences, HMO licences for November 21, if number 21 was to continue to be used as a HMO, an application would be needed, allowing officers to evaluate the resulting concentration. As a result of this context, officers consider it is reasonable to assess this application as though number 21 is not an HMO. In light of this, it is considered that there are 6 active lawful HMOs within the 50-metre radius, resulting in a concentration of 8.86%. Principle 2 relates to amenities and facilities. The proposed layout proposes sufficiently sized bedrooms, amenity space and facilities to accord with SPD. As you can see on the screen now, the site is located within a is not located within a flood zone and is therefore in accordance with Principle 3. Principle 4 relates to parking. As you can see from the images on the screen, parking within the area is at capacity. However, in line with Principle 4, this is not considered detrimental if the site is located within 400 metres of a bus stop and 400 metres of a local centre. The site is located within 400 metres of a bus stop, both into the town centre and out of the town centre, towards North Northampton, with the furthest being 250 metres away, which connects to the north of Northampton. The site is within 65 metres. Show you there's the connection to the bus stop to the north, goes to the north, and then the site is located within 65 metres of the Kettering Road local centre, as shown on the screen. As a result, and in line with Principle 4 of the SPD, the proposed development is considered to be acceptable. The report addresses other material considerations, such as the proposed development's impact on the conservation area and neighbour amenity. Overall, it is considered that the proposed development accords with the relevant planning policies and material considerations and is therefore recommended for approval. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Are there any questions from the committee? Councillor Cartwright.
Thank you, Chair. Could I just have a clarification? If the other house was an HMO, what would the percentage come up to?
If number 21 is a HMO, it would be over the 10%, but it's got a temporary exemption notice at the moment, and the landlord is working toward taking it back to its original occupation, which is a C3 dwelling. So, and then there's no historic licenses for it, so they couldn't say it was been a HMO for 10 years or the time period that means it's lawful. So they need to apply for a new planning permission, which then would then be assessed, the concentration would be assessed. So the officers in the council have control over the concentration.
Thank you.
Councillor Beryl.
Thank you, Chair. Could you just pull up the concentration map again, please? Thank you.
Oh, sorry, we didn't hear you. Because your microphone wasn't on. Any further questions from the committee? No, okay. So we'll now move on to public speaking in the following order. So Councillor Bob Purcell is obviously not here tonight, so we'll now move straight on to Councillor Zoe Smith, who's the local board member.
You happy for the map to disappear, Councillor Beryl, so I can put the time on? Thank you.
Thank you. I am speaking on this as a local ward member. It's also worth noting I'm a former resident of Derby Road, so very well acquainted with this street and with the issues on this area. I think one thing it's really important that planning committee members understand is I know that there are some properties in the Abington and Phipsville ward that are very large Victorian houses. They're quite spacious, they're quite well-designed large houses. The houses on Derby Road are really standard, small, three-bedroomed dwellings appropriate for occupation by families who live in those sort of areas. These are not some of the large designs that you might say see in areas of Phipsville, for example, which are slightly different in their style. Derby Road are very small, very contained, three-bedroom family homes with very little natural extension, which is why when there are the larger scale HMO applications like these, they require extensions and they require moving beyond the natural boundaries of the property in order to do that, and thereby permanently removing the appropriateness of the dwelling as a family home, suitable family home, rather than being a HMO. Derby Road, as was acknowledged in the photos and in the conversation, is well beyond parking capacity. There are serious issues in terms of the speeding in the area and the nature of it. Both the highways and the police, whilst they have not objective, have acknowledged that parking is at capacity and that the impact that that can have in the area. Derby Road also suffers from extremely bad issues in terms of littering and fly tipping. The other thing to note about this particular property is that, notwithstanding the fact that it is very near to density to the full HMO density, that there are actually properties that, at least until very recently, have been operating illegally as HMOs in the area. Several other properties that there are concerns regarding that. And not only that, so that there would be that tipping point, that also right next to number 1 Derby Road is a large number of flats. Whilst I recognise they can't be taken into account with the density, again, that's a quite heavily dense area of flats nearby. So all of this means that the 6 occupants, in particular the fact that it's 6 occupants rather than 5, would have a really significant impact on neighbouring residential amenity, the flats next door being a very key fly tipping spot. If there is any sort of overspill of large amounts of refuse, inevitably these large scale HMOs create a far greater amount of refuge. Even if bags are put out on the appropriate day, it still adds to this huge blocking of pavement, large numbers of sacks going out, and the general impact in this area of Derby Road. So I'm really strongly urging the committee to consider refusing this application. In the event that the committee felt that this was an appropriate use of Derby Road, despite the concerns that I've outlined, what is really important is that there is absolutely no increase beyond this, as we've seen in a repeated pattern in Abington and Phipsville in recent months of applications for a certain number of occupants coming back with an increase, and the line being that there's only an increase of 1 or an increase of 2, and that would have a minimal impact. So in the event that the committee were minded against the comments that I've made to approve this application, I would strongly urge the committee to add a condition that limits the HMO to no greater occupancy than that laid out here, because if it is felt that what is in front of you today is an appropriate application despite the concerns I've raised, then that is what should be laid out. There should be conditions put in place that says that the occupancy of this property will not exceed the numbers sought about today. So as I say, I would strongly urge you to consider refusal of the application altogether. In the event you do feel it is suitable to approve it, I would strongly recommend the addition of a strident condition to limit the occupancy to the numbers laid out today.
Thank you. Are there any questions, Councillor Rainbird?
What do you say to, obviously, you've read the report, to Highways saying that they've got no objections and that the local parking is known to be under stress, but even though the site is within a sustainable location, within, 400 meters of a bus stop?
As in,
make it
what's the definition of a sustainable location within the HMS SPD? It's 400 metres in a bus stop, but this one's 250 to the furthest one and 60 metres to Ketchum Road, so highly sustainable in that sense.
I mean, I think I would say what I have said many times, and I think that's something that does need to be addressed in terms of how we lay out our planning policy and our approach to it in the future. The absolute reality of Abington and Phipsville, Castle, the other wards in this area, is that you just have to walk along the street, take photos of the street. You know that the reality of it as a highly sustainable location does not match up. I did mention that until relatively recently, I lived on Derby Road, and I've had the experience of pushing a buggy blind into the road because of cars parked right on the corner of McGee Street, of the Bostock Avenue, of Adams Avenue, the streets that come off Derby Road, and absolute capacity, cars parked on the corner everywhere in that area. And as I say, as a parent, I have pushed buggies out blind into roads with absolutely no choice about it because there's no visibility because of where the cars are parked. So the highly sustainable location, whilst laid out in the planning policy and facing the restrictions and the way in which it's weighted, is still absolutely does not reflect the reality of what we know, because there are all sorts of reasons that people don't work in the town centre or they don't work at the hospital. People work in all sorts of areas. People work from home and they require but they have other responsibilities elsewhere. People work in different areas. People have large families. People have disabilities. And the reality of modern life is that people at the moment drive. And also, we know that at least on one occasion, we've dealt with a HMO in this area based on a bus stop in Stimpson Avenue that was actually no longer had buses that went to it. And so that wouldn't be true of one Derby Road. But the truth is that buses are not entirely reliable. There are all sorts of bus use issues with buses that mean that the reality is people drive and they park their cars and it's beyond capacity. And if 6 people do that, that has a huge detrimental impact on the area.
Cheers, thank you.
Any further? Councillor Beryl?
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Smith. I think your description of Derby Road was spot on. I completely feel I understand and feel your concerns, especially regarding parking. The litter is a major issue down that street. Thank you. Thank you very much. And Councillor Rainbow, you know that street very well also. You know that street very well also.
Yeah, I do know that street very well, and I agree with Councillor Zoe Smith that the litter is a huge problem around that area. Yeah.
Any further questions from the committee? Thank you. We now have Pat Dooley, who's the agent for the applicant.
Okay. Good evening, Chairman, members of the committee. Thank you for allowing me the opportunity to speak in support of this application on behalf of the applicant. This proposal seeks permission for the conversion of number 1 Derby Road from a dwelling house to a 6-person house of multiple occupation, together with modest side and rear extensions. I would respectively submit that this proposal fully complies with the Council's adopted planning policies and represents an appropriate form of development in a highly sustainable location. Members will note that a number of objections have been received, principally related to the parking, refuse, loss of family home and concerns regarding the general impact of HMOs. Starting with a policy position, the Council's own assessment confirms that the proposal complies with the adopted HMO supplementary planning document and remains below the Council's established concentration threshold. The officer confirms within his report that there are 79 residential properties within the relevant 50-metre radius, and that including this property, the concentration of HMOs would be 8.86%, remaining below the 10% threshold. Aside of what other properties may or may not be previously or today, it is today that we need to consider this. So options such as number 21, etc., would have to apply for planning permission and be considered in its own merits at the time. Turn to the issue of the location. I would suggest that this is actually exactly the type of a location where the form of accommodation should be supported. The property is situated approximately 65 metres from the Ketchum Road local centre, placing future occupiers within very easy walking distance of shops, supermarkets, restaurants, takeaways, employment opportunities and day-to-day services. In addition, there are bus stops located within a very short walking distance of the property, providing regular services into Northampton Town Centre and other parts of the town. This is confirmed in the officer's report and again meets with the HMO guidance. Unlike many HMO properties located within more suburban areas, this property is positioned on the edge of a local centre, close to services, public transport and existing high-density development. It is therefore not an isolated family dwelling within a quiet cul-de-sac or in the central part of Derby Road, but a property located within a mixed and sustainable urban environment where residents can comfortably live without being heavily reliant upon the private use of a car. In this instance, people will have the choice to live in the property and they will be aware of the parking provision available and may choose to live here because of the close proximity to where they do work rather than working elsewhere in the town. The local highway authority has raised no objection to the proposal and acknowledges that the site occupies a sustainable location with good access to the public transport. The officer report also concludes that whilst parking pressure exists within the area, that again it complies with the HMO criteria. Members may also wish to consider that the property currently comprises a 4-bedroom family dwelling. Such a property could quite lawfully accommodate a large family, potentially with 6 or more occupants with multiple vehicles. The officer report concludes that occupation by 6 residents would not generate a level of activity materially greater than that which could arise from the lawful use of the property as a family home. Immediately adjacent to the application property is a modern 3-storey block containing approximately 12 flats. These flats naturally generate regular daily activity, visitors, deliveries and movements throughout the day and evening. Against the backdrop, the occupation of this property by 6 individuals is unlikely to create a level of activity that would appear unusual or out of character with the immediate locality. Indeed, the officers specifically concluded that the use of the property by 6 occupants would not generate comings and goes, noise or disturbance materially greater than that could arise from the lawful occupation of the property as a dwelling house. Concerns being raised on refuge and waste. These have been allowed for as being conditioned, should the application be supported, with refuge and recycling storage details to be submitted for approval prior to the building being occupied. Whilst there are concerns regarding the loss of a family home, planning policies do not prevent the conversion of family homes where the relevant policy requirements are met. And in this case, officers have carefully assessed the proposal against those policies and then concluded that the development is acceptable. Furthermore, the proposal would continue to provide residential accommodation and contribute towards meeting Northampton's diverse housing needs by providing high quality accommodation for people who require housing.
Please conclude your
sustainable
statements.
needs. The applicant owns and manages a number of similar properties within Northampton with over 140 rooms available within his portfolio, and they're all to a very high standard. These rooms are all over 10 square metres, not small little rooms, all having their own ensuite bathrooms, giving us a very high standard of accommodation for a HMO property in this location. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any questions for the speaker? Councillor Furman.
Thank you, Chair. Just picking up on what you said about no objection from the highways, which was perfectly right, but both police and highways have noticed a massive stress on parking issues there. Local parking is known to be under stress, and what sort of
I fully appreciate the issues and the concerns, and it's quite obvious when you look at the photographs. With a HMO property, the occupiers do go and look at the property. I can see the level of parking that's available and understand that it might not be suitable for them to live in that property. However, on the reverse of that, there is where they would look at it and think, I don't need a car here because I only work down the road in the town centre and I can catch a bus or can walk to work. So that's the sort of people it will attract. You've got the option. It's not like a family home where you would have mum and dad and the kids who are 18 who have a car have to live there because they have no other choice. And they're actually then increasing vehicles on the road. In this instance, the occupiers have the choice. And it's clear that parking isn't available for them. And it does comply with the criteria of being within 400 metres within 250 metres and 65 metres of bus stops. So it complies with the criteria of the planning policy.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any further questions from the committee? No, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Are there any points you wish to come back on at this stage?
Just to cover off the occupancy, there is a condition. Condition 6 covers the maximum amount of occupants, which is to be 6 residents. Just to cover that one.
Thank you. So Casey.
Sorry to interrupt. I just wanted to add to the occupancy. The planning permission is just for 6 residents. So if there were more residents, it would be a breach of planning control, and there would be enforcement powers available to the planning enforcement team to control that. Thank you.
Thank you. At this stage, obviously, now we move to the committee to debate. Oh, sorry, Councillor Cartwright, again, sorry, in your hand.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I fully appreciate Councillor Smith's points, and I think the agent responded quite well to them. We've seen many of these, and I think this is one of these where there's no legitimate reason for refusal. But were the committee minded to approve, is it possible to remove any further permitted development rights? So that it stays at 6 maximum and doesn't get extended again?
It would need planning permission anyway, so there's no PD rights for them to go any higher than that. So that would need, any increase to say 7 would need planning permission, so we would have some control over that.
Okay, thank you for that.
Okay. So we start the debate. So does anyone wish to start? Councillor Rainbird.
Yeah, I think everything's said. Like Councillor Cartwright said, there's no objective reason why this application could be refused. Highways have no objection. The police and crime officer has acknowledged the impact of the heavy parking, but no objection. So if anyone else has got anything else to say, I'd move the proposal to accept. That's not a proposal, I'm just asking for everyone's opinion.
Councillor Furman.
Thank you, Chair. I'm not convinced by this application. The HMO concentration is just below the threshold. Also, the police and the highway teams have confirmed existing stress and problems, yet the assessment proceeds on assumption. I'm not satisfied that the impacts have been fully assessed and adequately mitigated. I think it leaves a degree of material uncertainty in the planning balance. For that reason, I'm unable to support this application.
Okay. Any further comments from the committee? Councillor Cartwright?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I understand that point of view, and it's one we've voiced many times, but we've seen that it is below capacity, and that you know, you can't take into account things that aren't there, unfortunately, or aren't presented as official. So, you know, every other house could be an unofficial HMO, but you can't proceed on that if it hasn't been reported and dealt with in that way. You can't count it. Loath as we are for these, it is a town centre property. You'll have a higher concentration of people in the town centre, and I would need very good reasons. I'm not happy with it to be able to vote against it, unfortunately.
Councillor Breeze?
Both really good and compelling arguments. But planning policy would, which I am a great advocate of, would seem to support this application, even though it's with a very heavy heart. So I do think that the concentration of HMOs and legal as HMOs operating is a blight for other residents, but policy would support it on this occasion. So I'm prepared to go with the officer's advice.
Okay. Councillor McMurtry, I'll come to you afterwards.
Yeah, I do just want to echo those points. Like it does feel like overdevelopment. Like having looked at the street scene, it's so massively overparked. There's fly tipping is common. So it does feel like it's placing undue stress on the area. But yeah, at the same time, I'm not sure it would hold that appeal, and sort of planning policy would indicate that we would go towards accepting. So yeah, that's just my 2 pence on it.
Councillor Rainbird?
I'd like to move proposal that we go with the officer's recommendation and allow this application.
Okay, do we have a seconder for this? Councillor Cartwright? I'll let you summarise.
Thank you, Chair. It's proposed by Councillor Rainbird and seconded by Councillor Cartwright that the application be approved in accordance with the case officer's recommendation.
Okay, can I see a show of hands in favour of the proposal? I can see those who are voting against. Any abstention? 2, 3.
3 against.
Yeah, 3 against, yeah. Abstentions? That's approved. Item 11, 8 Cedar Road. And this item has been withdrawn from the agenda for the reasons set out in the committee updates. Item 12, urgent business. Verbal update from the Democratic Services Officer on up and coming business for the committee in June and July. There are no other items of urgent business, and our next meeting will be held on the Thursday, the 18th of June, 2026 at 1 Angel Square.
Thank you, Chair. Before we move into private session, the July meeting is proposed to be held on the 2nd. Due to the fact it's July, due to other meetings in the calendar and due to resource constraints, we're unable to resource a second meeting of this committee in July. There are still a number of applications that require determination, some fairly high profile ones. So officers are suggesting that on the 2nd of July, and to give the committee members as much notice as possible, I'm proposing essentially that we start at 4 p.m. On that date, if that's okay with everybody, with a month's notice. Okay. But on the basis that a month's notice provides sufficient time for groups to organise substitutes for those who may be able to attend, if that's okay with everybody. Any burning objections to that?
We'll get pizza in. We'll get pizza in.
Councillor Smith.
Can I just highlight with that the only sort of concern, absolutely taking into account the points made about groups and substitutes, but I think the other really important thing, particularly when there are high profile cases, is to bear in mind that members of the public also need their democratic right to come along and have their say at meetings. And I'm thinking councillors make the arrangements as necessary around work, but members of the public are not in a position to do that and to take that leave. So it's really important that anything we do also consider whether we're alienating or eliminating the democratic right of members of the public to have their say.
Through you, Chair, we would give members of the public the same notice. If members are minded to agree to this, we'd obviously publish that start time tomorrow, that it would be at 4 p.m. But we also have to balance that with the responsibility and duty to finish at a reasonable time as well. And it is felt that if we start at 6 p.m. On the 2nd of July, it would be very, very unlikely to finish before midnight. Therefore, an earlier start time would be prudent.
Take that point on board, but can we also take it as a lesson in considering the way in which we're organising the planning committees, whether the volume of work and the number of planning committees and some of the decisions that were made historically where multiple planning committees were reduced to one on the basis there wasn't enough work for us to do. Can we consider that there might actually be quite a lot of work to do and there needs to be some sort given as to how that's going to work in the future?
And through you, Chair, Councillor Cartwright points out, yes, the national scheme of delegation is anticipated to significantly reduce the amount of items coming forward to planning committees, but I will feed that back in. And you also have my guarantee that it will be a one-off. We're not looking to reduce or move the start time back to 4 p.m. on a permanent basis. It is just the collection of circumstances that leads us to consider the most efficient way of running the meeting in July to try and balance the benefits of everybody.
Thank you. I point out that strategic often starts at 2 o'clock. There are, again, constraints. It depends, and we have to get the business of the council done for everybody in West Northants. So sometimes needs must, but if we could put that. Give everybody a month's notice. If we could put that up, that the start time would be 4 o'clock, in advance. Don't have to have the agenda up, but I mean, put the start time on the website, the same as you do now, which I think you said you were going to do anyway.
Through you, Chair, if everyone's happy to just agree by a show of hands, and I'll enact that tomorrow morning.
Okay, all those happy with the 4 p.m. start?
Okay. Thank you, Chair.
Can you give us an idea of the number of agenda items? Because there is also a huge amount of reading. And that's.
Sorry, could you repeat the question?
So the number of agenda items, because something to bear in mind also is that there's a huge amount of reading involved.
It's currently 13 that the number stands, but that may be whittled down.
Is there any way of
July.
giving us sort of an extra, not in terms of prepared reports, but an indication of the application number so that we can familiarise ourselves with them? Because 13, that's
the elements of the Local Government Act that require us to publish the agenda within 5 clear working days. 5 clear working days is the latest we must publish the agenda. So if the reports are ready, I'll endeavour to circulate them earlier than those 5 clear working days, if that is practically possible. But I mean, the difficulty is the draft agenda is subject to change. Therefore, we can circulate at a later date once the draft agenda has been confirmed in a slightly more firmed up way than it currently is. We could circulate the application numbers, but you would be provided with obviously the report and plans, and we will try and get those out earlier. We can go earlier with agenda publication if the reports are ready. Thank you.
Councillor Rainbird.
I'd like to ask, with 13 applications in one sitting from 4 till 9 o'clock, do you reckon that's doable or?
Through your chair, we'd anticipate to reduce that number between now and July. We
Oh,
tend to
sorry.
start, we tend to start with a much larger draft agenda than we eventually end up with by publication day. So I'll work closely with officers to manage that number as best we can.
Cheers.
Thank you.
Okay, any more comments or? Nope, okay. So now we move on to item 13, which is the exclusion of press and public. That's under section 100A of the Local Government Act 1972. The public and press will be excluded from the meeting for the following items of business on the grounds that if the public and press were present, it would be likely that the exempt information falling under provisions of Schedule 12A, Part 1, paragraphs 3 and 5 would be disclosed to them. And that in all the circumstances of the case, the public interest in maintaining the exemption outweighs the public interest in disclosing the information. So we now move on to item 14, which is the appeal statement of the case